Max, you done well with the place.
Yeah,
It's a nice digs. These
yeah.
are some nice digs.
I probably already told you this, but when I first came up with the concept for this podcast, you were probably one of the top three names on the list of people I was excited to sit down with. One, because I feel like we're sort of the like kindred spirit in terms of just uh, I like gleaning things from you because I feel like even though I don't necessarily love the label entrepreneur for
Hmm.
myself, sometimes there's no denying it. There's just some tendencies. And so I like asking you questions and kind of learning from where you've been. So I'm hoping to unpack that even more. Well, Dr. Taylor, thank you so much for being here at the 9017 studio for one of the first episodes of A Name for Yourself podcast. So I'll start off by saying we've known each other roughly a year, I would
Hmm.
say, which seems like it went really fast. Because if I was gonna, you said a year, I was gonna guess probably 4 months because it just shot by. But a large part of how we know each other is because of this initiative at SMSU,
Hmm.
the Center of Innovation and Entrepreneurship, starting up. Which you are kind of the trailblazer to actually take it up off the ground.
Yeah, exactly right. The center started from the hard work of my colleagues, Dr. Douglas Simon, Dr. Denise Goshner, and Miss Liz Trouvé. Um, they felt like we need a center that promotes entrepreneurship and
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurial thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Douglas Simon put together a great package. We got what I call seed money to paint the walls,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And to outfit about four spaces combined. And then the pandemic hits. And then Dr. Douglas Simon, who serves our country, Dr. Douglas Simon, thank you for your service. He went away. And so when I was hired, the new hiring manager or my hiring manager said, you know what? In addition to teaching, would you be willing to head up this center for us?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, absolutely, I'd be willing to head up the center because I'm an entrepreneur and I'm a real entrepreneur, meaning that I create businesses that make money.
Yeah.
And they knew that and they were very excited about that. And that brought me to SMSU. And so I had a dual responsibility of not only trying to get my classes ready and learn the culture of SMSU, but also trying to take this 2-page document and make it real
Mm-hmm.
and something that people could touch and feel and see in a very short span of time. And I know that some of the feedback that I got from my colleagues was that we cannot believe how far the center has come in such a short amount of time. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, well, that's because we have students that said, this is what we want in the center. We had community leaders and business owners like yourself and saying, this is where the center can go. You and I had a lot of good conversations
Mm-hmm.
about the center. And then you had administrative leadership that trusted that these conversations and the actions that would support this vision would be the best thing to do for
Mm-hmm.
the students as well as the community. So all this action and all these achievements that have taken place in a relatively short period of time are the results of a lot of conversations, a lot of trust with the community stakeholders, and just getting after it.
Yeah.
And if anyone's familiar with universities and what I call bureaucratic organizations,
Mm-hmm.
the distance that we covered in such a short amount of time, that's very amazing. That's
Yeah.
something that we all should be proud of because that rarely happens in these complex organizations.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As you referenced, you are an entrepreneur, not just by word, but by deed, which is an important distinction.
Yeah, exactly.
Being able to make money. So I know you have an organization that is still running called EnterCorp. That there's a partner over there that I've collaborated with through other podcasts, things like that. And that is in Tennessee, I
Hmm.
believe.
Right?
Yep.
Exactly.
And that was really birthed out of your time in the Navy, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
So could you string that story together of really going from the Navy to an entrepreneur of entrepreneurs? How does that
I like that
story
phrase.
connect together?
In 2001, I went to Milton, Tennessee. And Milton, Tennessee is the hub of human resources for the Navy. And there was this admiral that knew I was trying to become this MBA that specialized in information systems. And he said, Lieutenant Taylor, I need you on Sea Warrior. And I said, what in the heck is Sea Warrior? And Sea Warrior was this effort that was part of a larger strategy in which we called it Navy 21, Navy 21. And it was the human resources piece. And the human resources strategic objective was, how do we get the best and brightest people in the Navy? How do we train, develop, and nurture them and become an employer of choice? And in order to achieve that goal, your systems have to be right because they have to help facilitate the organizational strategy.
Yeah.
So what we ended up doing was asking ourselves the question.
I beat you, just so you know.
Man, okay, that's cool. Oh, man. How can our systems be leveraged to achieve those goals and objectives? And my job was to look at the IT architecture, talk to the end users, and ask very simple questions. And the theme of the questions essentially was, what do you need the system to do?
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
And basically that insight allowed us to make sure that we shape systems of value and migrated from a legacy footprint to what we call a human resource information management systems that was very important to achieving the human resource goals of the Navy. And this is a fun fact. That effort is still taking place right now.
Is it really?
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just
amazing.
crazy. It's 20 years.
Yeah.
And it's still going on.
Yeah.
And that's another entrepreneurship lesson that is very important. And that lesson is making sure that you stay the course and you hold true to your vision. Yes, you make adjustments to the vision as needed because there are pressures and forces that you have to recognize as an entrepreneur. But if you really, really believe in your vision, then once you make those adjustments, try to stay true to that vision.
Yeah.
Work to stay true to your vision. Now, IntelCorp started out of that because I was so excited about working on this human resource project that I wanted to make sure I stayed in the area. But I also found myself wanting to be an entrepreneur because I was working with consultants, what I call grade A consultants or tier 1 consultants. I said to myself, you know what? I can do that.
Yeah.
So I started this company, and it was initially called Vision Achieve Strategies, and it allowed me to stay on that project with the Navy, and I split my time. Half the time I was in uniform, and then the other time I was civilian in a suit and tie doing the same work, you know what I'm saying? And then as it got more complicated, I said I needed to bring in a technical expert. His name was Akbar Sheikh, and he and I still work together to this day. Matter of fact, you will meet him very soon.
Yeah.
And Akbar said to me, George, I'm more than happy to be one of the managing members, but we need to really clarify what we do. And so another lesson for all you entrepreneurs out there is be able to articulate your value proposition.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do. We say, who are we? What are we good at? And what is it that we're trying to accomplish? So Vision Achieve Strategies and IntelCorp essentially did the same thing, but we got rid of all that extra fluff. Basically, Vision Achieve Strategies was a catch-all. And so I had real estate in it, and I had business planning in it, and I had all this stuff that didn't really articulate or wasn't true to what we did.
Yeah.
We renamed it IntelCorp, and it's been going ever since. So IntelCorp now is in its 10th year.
Wow. That's a big milestone.
That's a huge milestone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And so we talked about this before, and I want to revisit it because it is a fascinating story about some of the tendencies that you had as a child that were entrepreneurial that started to kind of make its way out. You knew there was something there, and then, as you said, it kind of really clicked when you were in the Navy of seeing someone else in a position thinking, oh, I could do that. But what was it when you were a kid that started to kind of rear its head?
I found out that if I'm intrinsically motivated, I go into this another realm of reality. I can get it done. I put insecurity to the side. Any apprehensions, any reservations fall by the wayside. That's the first thing that I realized. intrinsic motivation is very important to getting your goals done. Another thing I recognize with that, I'm a pretty good leader of others. And I would gather my childhood friends. I would say, you know what? We're going to make some money today. We're going to knock on the doors. We're going to find out what our neighbors need. And based on their needs, we're going to provide yard services, right?
Yeah.
And we made some pretty dang good money doing it. We're just doing it. And then the story I shared with you in the earlier podcast was that I love music. I love music. I love all kinds of music. And one thing that I started doing was I rehearsed my childhood friends to this group of songs. They were, at the time, it was Paul McCartney, Stevie Wonder, Michael Jackson, Prince, all those 80s and late 70s artists. And we started booking shows.
Yeah.
And we were terrible. We got into some of these clubs and they were like, man, let's be nice to the kids. Yeah, they gave us the obligatory hand claps, but we were terrible, but we did it.
Yeah.
And so as a kid, I realized that intrinsically driven, I'm going to do it, and that I'm a pretty good leader. Now, when I get to the Navy, it's important that I say this. I'm not self-proclaiming that I'm a good leader.
Yeah.
That's just the feedback that's given to me. I was just like, hey, that's very presumptuous of you.
And I know you said this earlier, but that was something that was identified by this individual who first invited you to this mysterious naval project that you were thinking, what is going on here? But yeah, good clarification.
Yeah.
I know you weren't self-proclaiming that, but I also see you as a very gifted leader. So
oh, thank you. That means a lot coming from you. And so we started rocking and rolling with Intercorp, and I started realizing that I had pretty good leadership skills. So the Navy kind of enhanced and validated some of these assumptions, right? Because as a kid, you're not really saying, hey, is this a valid assumption? You're just being a kid and a young adult. But you do recognize the pattern. And the pattern that I recognized while I was in the Navy was that I had this ability to connect with others in which they could see the best in themselves. And my commanding officer, his name is Scott Spencer. And Scott, I hope you watch this. I got to make sure I get this to him.
Yeah.
He believed in me, and he made me a department head as an ensign, and that never happens.
Yeah.
And on a 1,100-person ship, that would never happen. But he said, I noticed that people gravitate towards you. I want to leverage that. And I said, Captain, I don't understand. Number one, why are you picking me? And number two, why am I going to all these meetings that I know nothing about, that have nothing to do with me? And then he said, aren't we an organization of people? And I said, yes. And then he said, don't you think it's important that we lead these people and motivate them? And they realize that they can be the best that they can be? And I said, yes. And then he said, you're exactly where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Isn't that a nice way to say that?
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so that really developed me. And that, the biggest thing I got out of that is own your gift.
Yeah.
Own your gift. And I had a colleague in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And for the listeners, I came from Tulsa prior to reporting here. And I know we're going to get into that. But I used to have this habit of every time I gave this conference presentation or the dog and pony or whatever initiative we had, I would ask, how was it? And I would never forget her. Her name Corincy Wilson, another good friend. Corincy, you're going to get your shout out. Make sure you get this podcast. And she said, stop asking me that. Own your stuff. It was a bad word in there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
She didn't say stuff.
Yeah.
But what she was saying is, when you have gifts, you don't need to be validated by everybody that you see.
Yeah.
Own your gifts and go for it. You just make sure that you serve your purpose.
Yeah. I think that's excellent that you have such a good memory of those defining relationships that really solidified these tenets, these ideas inside you. One being your commanding officer who validated assumptions that you already had. It's just so much more meaningful when someone else externally validates things you think are true. Then you know they're true. And then in that example as well, just the idea of, oh yeah, you're right. I don't need validation from everyone else. I know that, but when I hear from someone else, that really drives it home for me. That's probably something I need to work on.
Max, you and I are very similar in that we love being around people.
Yeah.
I don't know your personality site, dimensions, but I'm what I call an introvert extrovert,
Yeah.
and I'm naturally defaulting to introvert. However, when I'm energized, I can easily switch to an E. I think it's very important that people realize that both are important,
Yeah.
right? And there's value in being both. I remember I used to take this Myers Briggs personality indicator assessment,
Mm-hmm.
and on some days I was an ESTJ or I was an ISTJ. The letters would stay the same except for the E and I.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
So I know I'm right on the tip of that. But to your point about feedback, feedback is important. And it's important to get honest feedback so that we can improve performance.
Mm-hmm.
And the geek gonna come out in me just a little bit. There's this theory called goal path theory. And goal path theory essentially says that we are driven to achieve our goals by being intrinsically motivated, interested in the work. We feel that there's meaning in the work, but we also need to know that we receive feedback. We need to receive feedback so that we can make the necessary adjustments so that we can go to the next level.
Yeah.
And I'm acutely aware of that theory, and I would have to say it's very true when it comes to me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I do need feedback because through feedback you get better.
Mm-hmm.
You also become aware of the need to make adjustments
Mm-hmm.
and refine your plan, and that's how you get better. You know what the saying, iron sharpens iron, and that's a very true statement, especially when you have very high aspirational goals.
Yeah. Yep. I would say we're probably similar in that introvert extrovert way. I think many people would probably say it's similar to you, that they would look at me and say, "Oh, he's obviously an extrovert." But that really is only, like you said, when there's some intrinsic motivator that's kind of lighting you on fire. And it was important. I remember when I realized that the distinction there, because it's easy to say, "Oh, I am an extrovert. I like talking to people." But I think someone summed it up for me once by saying, "How do you feel recharged? Do you feel recharged by talking to people just for the sake of talking? Or do you feel recharged when you finally get to go off and be by yourself?"
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's the second one.
Mm-hmm.
I do love talking to people, but it's really in the areas where there's something like this. This makes me an extrovert. Small talk at a cocktail party doesn't make me an extrovert.
Right,
It drains me
Right.
quite a bit.
Exactly.
I think people probably would do well to know more about that, to understand that in themselves too, and not just feel like they have to belong in one camp.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that notion. I know that sometimes it's situations on the ground. Like, for example, there are times where I'm speaking every day for 7 to 8 hours a day,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm looking for that moment just to catch my breath,
Yeah.
and that I comes out strong.
Yeah.
And I will get to myself. I write down my thoughts. I will reflect. Um, but then there are times when it's maybe 2 or 3 day gap before I speak to people, and I'm like, man, I can't wait to get out there again. I
Yeah.
can't wait to share this dream and to share this vision. So my E and I shifts based on the situation on the ground,
Mm-hmm.
how often I'm in contact with people, the size of the goal. Like sometimes you need to be by yourself
Mm-hmm.
just to make sure that you have this moment to reflect and to make the necessary adjustments in your business planning so that you can achieve your goals, right? If
Mm-hmm.
you're always talking and you always have this on light or this on switch, it's hard to get big things done because I know entrepreneurs that have this tendency to always want to be around people, but they're not getting anything done,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now,
Yeah.
if you were lucky and fortunate enough to have a business partner, then that's good. They can kind of offset that. But I would say having this sense of self-awareness and knowing when you need to recharge, reflect, and actually get things done is a very important characteristic of an entrepreneur.
Sure. Yep. Yeah, and I want to circle back to a comment you made about being an individual with large aspirations, because I know that you are, like myself and many people. The important, I think, distinction, and some area that I'm hoping you can give some guidance, some wisdom in, is and it fits with the name of the podcast, A Name for Yourself. That comes from in Genesis, the Tower of Babel, that they build this tower and they say, "Come, let us make a name for ourselves." And it doesn't say that God had an issue with that statement, but God had an issue with that motivation, essentially, of just making a name for yourself. But at in the same breath, and kind of opposite to that, there's a proverb that says, "A good name is better than riches." And so there's this idea that reputation does matter. There are ways to have ambitions, creative outlets, a desire of significance and success that aren't selfish. And so, as someone who I feel like has done that really well, navigated that area of wanting to drive, wanting to build, what advice do you have in staying away from the warning signs of selfish ambition, or maybe getting too big for your own britches, maybe building something in vain, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, that's a big question. That's a great question. Couple things. Number one, it goes back to this notion of feedback. You know, be open to feedback. And one thing that I constantly tell others, and I really tell myself this all the time, don't fall in love with your own voice. You know, after you start racking up success, it's easy to think that it's just you.
Yeah.
And as a young entrepreneur, I made that mistake. And that's something that I feel very important. I feel very willing to share, just because I don't want younger entrepreneurs to make that mistake. I was in real estate at a point in time, and I had a portfolio of $3.5 million. I think I shared this with you when I first met you.
Yeah.
It was a lot of real estate. I had apartment buildings, commercial buildings, single family homes, had money in the bank, and all this is, of course, before 2008.
Sure.
And I was 35, I'm probably about a little bit younger than you. I mean, about your age or a little bit older. And I started thinking that it was me. You know, I was traveling anywhere I wanted to go. I was doing pretty much what I wanted to do. And I was getting away from my moral compass, you know, and I was just getting beside myself, and I was treating people differently than I naturally would have treated them before that.
Yeah.
And then when 2008 hit and I lost it all, that really humbled me. It brought me to my knees, because had it not been for the Navy, I probably would have been homeless.
Yeah.
Because that portfolio of $3.5 million was heavily leveraged.
Sure.
And there were warning signs. People would talk to me, and I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know real estate like I know real estate. I made it this far. I wasn't listening to the voice of others. So I go back to gold path theories and listen to others.
Yeah.
But then when I had to take jobs that I thought I never would have taken in my life, I was built up through people who may be perceived as having nothing.
Right.
Right. And I started listening to them. And they are the ones that kind of let me know what my talents and gifts were. So they revalidated me in a way. They made sure that I got that confidence back up, and I became true to myself. That I was able to take the next steps to rebuild my business. And that's when Introcorp really took off.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, Introcorp Navy contract, and the fact that I was in the Navy helped me navigate through those times. But it was the people in these jobs that I had to take, day-to-day people, that many would say, well, they're not successful. They're living hand to mouth. They gave me the best advice.
Yeah.
They really helped me to look internally and look at, validate and realize my gifts.
That's awesome. I think I knew part of that. I don't think I knew that whole story. But what that makes me think of it, it's interesting that, you never know why you're experiencing something when it's happening, especially something negative. And there could be lots of reasons. But given the position you're in now of teaching, inspiring, and coaching the next generation of entrepreneurs in this area, how valuable to have lived through such a powerful experience personally. You can't make that up. You can't theorize about that. You have to experience it to have that.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And, the feedback that the students give me is that I said, Dr. Taylor, how old are you? It's like you live 2 to 3 lifetimes. And, I when they said it to me, I really reflect and think to myself, you know what? They're right. I have lessons that other people can learn from
Mm-hmm.
so that they don't have to go through these same pain points. Now, the thing about entrepreneurs and being young is that sometimes you think what happened to you could never happen to me.
Right.
And there are going to be cases where they're going to go for it and they have to learn to make their own mistakes.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
when they make their own mistakes, they're going to come out the other end better for it.
Mm-hmm.
My goal is just to share stories to a point that at the very least, whether good or bad come from it, it's an additional point of consideration.
Right.
Because with information, you can make better decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's important. I like that. Yeah, and so we talk a little bit about, well, before we get to the center, I want to talk about your family.
Mhm.
Yeah, I know, as you said before, you've been married 10 years, about,
10 years.
and together 20 years. You have 3 adult children together. Yeah, share with us a little bit about your family.
Yeah, man. I met my wife in 2001. We were both adults. Her kids were teenagers. My kids were preteen, going to be teenagers. I think I had one teenager.
Mm-hmm.
And 20 years later, here we are. We got married in 2011. A fun fact, this is something I care about. You might find it interesting. We got married at Elvis Presley's Graceland estate.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's our little 15 minutes of fame. So if
Yeah.
you go on Facebook, we were the first African-American couple to get married at Graceland.
Really?
And that became like a global story. Like you
Really?
can go there right now and you can see thousands of people from all over the world
Yeah.
liking that story. And it was funny because when I was getting married, I remember that the wedding was supposed to be small.
Mm-hmm.
My wife is a huge Elvis Presley fan. She loves entertainers. So she
Yeah.
likes Elvis and Michael, people that got this visual dynamic to their performance. And she said, I want to go and I want to get married at Graceland. And I remember coming out the steeple, like from the back, and there were all these people in that church. And I said, where are all these people coming from? There were people literally pouring out of the church.
Yeah.
Right? And the event coordinator said, you're the first African-American couple to get married at Graceland. I didn't want to tell you because I didn't want to freak you out.
Wow.
So that's our little 15 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
That's amazing, isn't it? And so my wife is my best friend. She's my sounding board. Like a good marriage, a healthy marriage to me,
Yeah.
you have truly married your best friend.
Yeah.
My kids are all adults. They're doing great. They're healthy. My son is looking to start his foray into entrepreneurship.
Oh,
And like
okay.
I shared with you
Yeah.
during a dinner last week, he and I are looking to do our very first business together. We don't know what that's going to be, but to me, it's like the business is one thing, but having that opportunity to do something with my son is something that I'm really, really excited about.
Yeah.
Because in the Navy, I didn't get the time with my kids that I really wanted to have. And kids are very understanding. They were somewhat understanding. But as adults, they're reflecting on the relationship, and their communication to me is, we know that you were doing what you had to do. However, we still missed you. And there's
Yeah.
still some things that you miss. So through those conversations and through this exploration, one of my more recent goals or aspirations or objectives, something that I'm very committed to doing,
Yeah.
is making sure that I reunite and reengage my children because that relationship is so important.
Yeah.
And
That's
just for
awesome.
them to be open to that is very important. And now my kids have kids. You know what I'm saying? I had my kids at a very young age. I'm still a fairly young man, but my first kid I had at 17.
Yeah.
And then the other two came like right behind it, right?
Yeah.
And that was a challenging time for me, but I'm proud of the fact that I did what I had to do.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I have some re-engaging to do with my kids. I think that's very important.
Yeah. I think that's an awesome goal. Yeah. And so, being at the center, I know the center is a big topic, so we'll spend some time there.
Yeah, let's do that.
the center has been a massive undertaking. It's the kind of thing you can't really launch in just one event. It's a year-long, if not more, launch of all the different components. But in the first year, I was genuinely surprised at the amount of traffic that came through in terms of students, but also community members that engage with it. What was your observation in connecting with these up and coming entrepreneurs in the first year, or expectations going into it, and what that was like?
I think my initial reaction was, how are we going to make this work? And I knew from the beginning that it wasn't going to work with our students.
Sure. Yep.
And I remember looking at that list, and I was like, man, there's 4 to 5 students in this class. That means that people do not know about this program.
Yeah.
And so I just went around like an entrepreneur would and
Yep.
just told everybody that was in 10 feet, the 10 feet rule,
Yeah.
about this new program. We had a pretty full session. And then I started talking to people like you.
Yeah.
What do you want in the center? What should the center be offering?
Sure.
Once I connected with the students, it was about connecting with community members because they are a big part of the center and they need to feel like their voices are being heard.
Sure.
You
Yep.
know, I'm going to share this with you. When I started talking to community members, one of the first things they shared with me, and this was a common theme, thank you for talking to us. Thank you for having this conversation, finding out what we need. We are very excited about the center. We've seen good ideas before. However, the fact that you're willing to talk to us as you go about designing the work, like you
Yeah.
say, it's a series of events,
Yep.
that is very meaningful because the community leaders, they really want to help the kids.
Yeah.
They really want, I say kids, they really want to help the students. And they see the center as this reciprocal incubator and where everybody gains value.
Yeah.
Not only can I help students, but students can help me because students are young, they think differently, they have good ideas. And you know what? They're not contaminated yet, right?
Yeah.
They have the courage to pursue these ideas.
Yeah. To think boldly.
Yeah, exactly,
Yep.
exactly. And so through that first year, as you know, because you were one of the stakeholders, it was about students, community members, taking that feedback and doing our very best to integrate it in a way in which everyone at the very least saw the value of the center. Now, as we go forward, we have to build upon that communicated value and then make sure that the center is sustainable. You know, can it self-fund itself? Are there enough projects to hold the interests of students? Are we creating student entrepreneurs? Can the value entities to include Enactus, the Southwest Marketing Advisory Center, and the Small Business Development Center work in a way that they can provide end-to-end value, and does the university hold the center or position the center in a way in which no matter where you are in the university, you can see yourself in the center. I'm a communications major. I want to think differently about communications. The center is for me. I'm in psychology. Holistic health and well-being is important to my major. That's what I want to do. The center has something for me. I'm a theater major, and I know that information technology and social media is being used to deliver content. How can I think differently about that content being delivered? The center is a place for me.
Sure.
So no matter where you are, we want students and community members to really, really see themselves in the center. And you said it early. The entrepreneur, the entrepreneur, the gig entrepreneur, or the professional that not even sure where they're going to go,
Yeah.
we want to make sure that they see themselves in the center.
Yeah. I think that's critical. I think you've done a good job from what I can observe of bringing all those pieces forward. It's really hard to just do them all simultaneously. So it's like we're going to focus here for a little bit. We're going to focus here. You kind of talked about this upcoming year. A lot is on the innovation side of the center. So I think that'll be a fun endeavor.
I know your hands are full with it.
Yeah.
To a certain extent, you
Yep.
know.
Yep.
Yeah, but thank you so much for lending your talents. The students think so highly of you, and they see themselves in you. And one of the biggest things that I really have for the center is making sure that the stakeholders were diverse, making sure that they represented a wide range of industries and experiences, and that they could relate to the people that are part of the center.
Sure.
And you, as an advisory committee member, really lend an important perspective and voice that leads to programming for the center that's really going to make it an attractive incubator of activity moving forward.
Well, I appreciate that. That's a high compliment. Yeah, I know after I spoke at one of your classes, probably like 2 weeks after that, I think you had called me one evening and said, "Do you take internships? I got someone that wants an internship," and I was like, "Oh yeah, I guess." So then you told me about Aviana, and I was super excited. She interned here for 8-10 weeks, somewhere in there. 9017, when it was nothing. She saw like the very beginning of 9017, the different floors, different walls, all that, and a business really start from nothing. So, that was fun. That was a different kind of engagement. I wasn't expecting that early on to engage with the center that way, but that really, I'd say, fired me up in terms of connecting more with students and kind of be able to collaborate with them.
Yeah, man, that was awesome. Aviana, she was so excited. In her practice run, she couldn't wait to get the final presentation. So Aviana, she's a theater major too.
Okay, yeah.
So she did a dual major, entrepreneurship and theater. It goes back to what we were saying earlier.
Yeah.
She saw the entrepreneurship mindset within her primary program. She came in and minored in entrepreneurship. She did an intern with you, and every dry run and update that she provided, she was always excited.
Yeah.
She was always excited.
Yeah. That's
And so to see that
awesome.
passion from the students in a program that's brand new, that was very humbling. I mean, you were there, and in practicing or getting prepared for this workshop,
Yeah.
there were a lot of nerves. There were a lot of students who were unsure. There were at the very beginning, there were students that had problems or a little challenge in putting the idea to the paper,
Yeah.
especially when they knew at the other end was this big old presentation.
Yep.
Right. And so as we get closer and closer, the culture in the classroom started to change. And that culture in the classroom is very important because it's a subculture that's going to roll up to the center. It's already becoming part of the center. And that is this notion of coming out your comfort zone, being intrinsically motivated to build a good business or to take a good idea to the market in a way that you can communicate that idea to anybody. And so what we saw in the culmination of that workshop was just this maturity that was accelerated in which the students really put out good products.
Yeah.
They really came out of themselves. So this year, we're trying to make sure that the students take the idea to market. We want to make sure that students know that whether you are promoting a good idea or you're starting your business, we want to make it real. So the center, when it pertains to the students, one of its benchmark of success is, are we making this idea real within the organization or by starting up a business? We just don't want to have a series of presentations.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that the work that the student is engaged in is something that's measurable, something
Sure.
that's really happening.
It's not just theory.
It's not just theory, experiential
Yeah.
learning.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's a really cool aspect of it, that there is an expectation and a motivation to do it for real. That's not something you always encounter, especially in higher education. Sometimes it is just all you can do is do the theory side of it. Okay, so as we kind of close this up or wrap this out, got to be respectful of your time as well. The center being such a big priority and a topic that obviously we spend some time on. For people watching this, how can they support the center, whether they are a young aspiring entrepreneur or an existing business owner or someone that works in industry?
A couple of ways. One is feel free to contact us. And my phone number is area code 507-537-6180, or you can email me at george.taylor.2@smsu.edu, or you can just come by and come to the center. The
Yeah.
center has this 24/7 access. If you want to take a tour, go to the center, get access to it. If I'm not there, security will let you in, and understand that the center is very much your center. You know,
Yeah.
it belongs to the community, it belongs to the students, it belongs to the region. It's a public university, and that's something that I really, really want to stress to our listeners that in order for this center to work, you have to take ownership of it.
Mm.
Enactus is a value entity that's part of the center, that
Mm-hmm.
which you know, and we just came from this retreat, and it was a great, great retreat. And during that retreat, one thing I told the students was that take ownership of your center. Do your work in the center. I don't care where you are in this community or within a university, make sure that you engage the center.
Yeah. That's
You'll
excellent.
get so much value. We have so much talent.
Yeah.
And not only internal talent, but
Yeah.
talent from the advisory committee as well. If we talk about, I make a big deal about the advisory committee. Something I think that's worth sharing with the leaders, with the listeners, is there are business owners and entrepreneurs from all throughout the region that's on that advisory committee.
Yeah.
And we just added a couple new members, as you know.
Yep.
We added the CEO of Humanity Alliance, which repurposes foods and give the food to families in need as well as students. We have another entrepreneur that is heavily involved in sustainability and reproducing byproducts from fruit and grain and repurposing this and sending it what we call upstream in the value chain to produce feed and to produce other products that even we consume.
Yeah.
And that sustainability company is going to play a huge part in the center. And then we have our strategic partners. We have AURI, which is Agricultural Utilization Research Institute. They're very much engaged in the work that we're doing in the center. We have the Chamber of Commerce helping us navigate throughout the immediate community. And then we are very well embedded within the Launch Minnesota framework to make sure that the center is providing this end-to-end value throughout the region. So that's all throughout the southwest region of Minnesota, but also our neighboring states.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's a pretty powerful initiative of collaborators. So, last question. Unless you have more, we can go further. Not everyone will be geographically able to appreciate the center, your experience, your expertise, and so if there was just one bit of wisdom that you could share for someone watching this that's saying, I have some of those entrepreneurial tendencies, but I don't know where to start. Either it's a lack of understanding or it's maybe an abundance of fear or some sort of combination. They're stuck. What wisdom would you share for that entrepreneur?
2 points that come immediately to mind are find yourself a mentor and don't be afraid to ask for help. Mentors provide a wealth of experience and knowledge and expertise, assuming they're qualified mentors, that can really, really provide you insight into their experiences to make your journey a little bit easier. Also, the way that we're educated and consume information is very different, right? It's changed in even your brief lifetime.
Yeah. Yep.
So there are things like TED Talks and Harvard universities or universities from yours truly that
Yeah.
you can watch
Yeah.
online to learn more about entrepreneurship. Educate yourself, read books, whether it's Tony Robbins or Jim Collins or the slew load of entrepreneurs that have credible voice in the space of entrepreneurship or entrepreneurship and innovation.
Yeah.
Consume them not every day, but at least 3 to 4 times a week. I make sure that I make time for a TED Talk. And
Yeah.
some of these people are my colleagues, but I'm of the person mindset that you can always learn.
Sure.
And TED Talks are very helpful,
Yeah.
very helpful and useful ways to educate yourself. And then there are podcasts like this that you can tune into, and you can set your filters and agents and search engines to keep giving you that information.
Yeah.
And last but not least, just take action. Be experimental. know that it's okay to make mistakes. Most of the time, they don't kill you. I don't know, depending on what business you're in, but
Yeah.
generally speaking, they won't kill you. And you'll learn something from it. Be patient with yourself. Entrepreneurship is not destination to me. It's a journey. It's an ongoing journey of lessons. If you look at the greatest entrepreneurs, they are always learning. I give you a good example. One of my favorite entrepreneurs is Warren Buffett, right? And Warren Buffett is always talking about how much he learned from others. And he's
Yeah.
very much attuned to the young entrepreneurs and the new ways that we invest. So if a man is worth 100 billion roughly can learn lessons, so can we in our
Yeah.
startup stages, right?
Absolutely. There's a lot of wisdom in that. A lot of those things take humility and courage.
Yeah,
It's kind of the
absolutely.
two words that came to mind as you shared that. So, yeah, which I think are two words that define you pretty well. Humble and courageous.
Oh, really?
I would say so, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for saying that because that's feedback that I need. And through that feedback, that's how I can continue to make sure that I serve my purpose.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, we'll do it again, hopefully.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I keep you and other community stakeholders informed of the progress of the center. You're fortunate because you get to witness it firsthand.
Sure.
But there are those outside of the walls of the advisory committee that can find value in the center. And by coming back periodically, maybe we can just update them and find space for them. And they know that it's their home for
Yeah.
innovation and startup business and entrepreneur thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, thank you so much for being here. And we will, I'm sure, be doing this again.
Yes, sir. Thank you.